This firm, over the last 40 years, has become the world's largest hedge fund with more than $160 billion in assets. It also has a reputation for creating the most amount of wealth for any hedge fund in the history of business. One of his success principles is using and creating a culture within the organization which he calls as radical transparency. They record every single conversation that happens within the organization, and they encourage their 1,500 or so employees to give brutally honest feedback to each other. And over these years, they've captured their mistakes, the learnings from their mistakes, and created what they now call as pre-OS or Principles OS. And this is an operating system, an algorithm that Ray expects will actually continue his legacy. As he steps down from active management of Bridgewater, he thinks he can humanize himself into this AI and clone himself, and hopefully that will immortalize himself in the process and guarantee the success of Bridgewater over the next many years and decades. AI is sweeping the world, and it's creating a big transformation. We've created a special video for you to walk you through our perspective on this transformation.
Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. We are living in an era of inexplicable change. In this VUCA world, innovation is survival. The biggest powers today might not survive tomorrow. The working age population across the globe is declining, and higher productivity is the only savior. Since technology-led productivity growth has come to a grinding halt, there's only one path that can lead us forward: the path of artificial intelligence. AI has been a tantalizing possibility for over 60 years, but in the last 5 years, it has become integral to our life. AI is everywhere. Tech giants are secretly building a massive army, marching into the future, armed with unbelievable amounts of data on us. But guess what? It's not just the giants. Companies big and small across countries and industries are seeing tremendous benefits from AI. Insurance companies are using AI to spot distracted drivers and assessing claims from accident pictures. Airlines and manufacturers are saving millions with smarter predictive maintenance. A farmer in Japan used AI to raise productivity and throughput. AI has already taken the big leap, promising to deliver unrivaled prosperity in the next 50 years. The question is, where are you? At the fringes of this big transformation, or at the forefront? It's time you wield your weapon. It's time to make your move. It's time to lead with AI.
I'm quite sure none of you in this room doubts this massive transformation potential. But I'm sure many people in your organizations are skeptics. And these are the 3 key myths that are there about AI. The first myth is that it's just another fad. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends, and it's not pretty, and AI doesn't really add any value to business. Now, for that, let me show you a quick example. In 2014, Google acquired DeepMind, and DeepMind was a UK-based startup with no revenues and had focused entirely on creating games to play Atari games. And they had shown a lot of success in playing Atari games. They paid £400 million for this company without any revenues. And then in the next few months, the researchers from DeepMind started working with Google on its data centers. Now, Google is one of the largest users of electricity in the world. They consume 0.01% of the world's electricity. So this is a really big expense. And these guys had completely optimized their data centers, so there was really doubt whether DeepMind could add value. And the next few weeks, about 10 to 12 weeks, DeepMind basically collected all the data from their sensors and other kinds of equipment in the data centers and showed that they could reduce the overall electricity bill by 40% and reduce the overheads by another 15%. They paid for their investment or acquisition of DeepMind right there in the first example. So AI does add value to business. The second myth that people talk about is AI is not relevant for me. It's only for a few industries. It's not really valid for my industry, my country, and so on. And for that, I'll give you one example of what AI is doing at Microsoft. a researcher called Saqib Sheikh, who's apparently visually impaired at the age of 7, he created this system. He's from Pakistan, and he created this system called Seeing AI. And Seeing AI, you have these glasses, and you can take a picture of anything. For a visually impaired person, he or she can take a picture of what's going on, and with that, the AI will automatically interpret the image and actually tell you something like it's a man jumping in the air doing a trick on a skateboard. It'll actually do that in real time for you. So AI is relevant for many, many applications, way beyond what we're imagining right now. The third myth is I'm not AI ready. And for that, let me share this example with you. This gentleman is an engineer. He visited his home in Japan for a vacation, and realized that his mom and dad, who are farmers, they're having trouble in manually sorting the cucumber in their farm. Now, these cucumbers come in 9 different varieties, and his mom was essentially sorting them out manually because they all matter. You have to look at the color, you have to look at the texture, blah, blah, blah. A number of different variables impact that, and they couldn't hire temporary workers because you can't train them in that amount of time when the season is ripe. And therefore, he decided to use a Raspberry Pi 3 computer and Google's TensorFlow and create a system which would automatically take pictures of the cucumbers and sort them out. He took 7,000 pictures to train the network, and then it actually started sorting these cucumbers automatically, helping his mom to do other things with her time, not just sorting cucumbers. So if they can use AI, anyone and everyone can use AI. Now, if you still don't believe, or if the people still don't believe, let's listen to our president, who's recently said AI has begun to transform the American workplace, change the types of jobs available, and reshape the skills that workers need in order to thrive. It's not just the US government, but UK government, Australian government, Russian government. Everybody thinks that AI is the next big thing, and they're already making moves in order to protect and leverage AI within their countries. Now, what does it take? If we all believe that AI is the next path forward, what does it take to lead AI? And I'm going to share with you a few examples and our perspective on what it takes to lead with AI. First example, Audrey. NASA built this system, is still building the system, and the idea of Audrey is to help firefighters navigate very difficult situations in case of fires. Now, as firefighters go into dangerous situations to save humans and save property, their bodies and their equipment, their gear, carry a bunch of different sensors. And there's an AI system that actually processes all these sensor data and gives them instruction on what to do in real time. Avoid that floor because that floor might actually cave in, or that roof may cave in, or there may be survivors in this part of the building, or just to escape or just get out of the place, right? So these are the kinds of directions that the AI gives in real time based on the data it's collecting, just helping and augmenting the intelligence that firefighters already have in the situation. It's relying on the firefighters' intelligence, but it's augmenting by giving them extra data, extra intelligence in real time. That, we believe, is augmenting intelligence. We must bring in data, compute, and learning to every situation and augment human intelligence. If you look at the world of BI, it's quite cluttered right now. I mean, I'm sure all of us have seen BI, and most of the time BI is old world, it's backward looking, it's not predictive, it's not personalized, and you have to find your answers. And one of the things that we try to do is to bring AI into BI, and that's our attempt. It's not, attempt to bring in AI and make BI more personalized, more engaging, so that it tells you what you need to know in real time and help you make better decisions. It's still not there as much as Audrey, but we hope to get it there. Now, the other theme around augmenting human intelligence is using new data sources. For example, investors, hedge fund investors, have long leveraged all the juice that they can get out of data, right? The earnings releases, these financial statements, and so on, and there is no real additional value in mining that data. So they started looking at new sources of data. One of the things that they have started to leverage is information coming from satellite images of parking lots. By looking at those images, they're able to determine whether a retailer is going to miss the next earnings guidance or not. And this is new signal coming from new data. So the real advantage in your organizations could be the amount of the data that you have not yet leveraged, because there is certainly new signal in that data and that adds value. Let's take an example of where we have seen that work. This is a claims situation in an insurance company where we are building models to ascertain what to do with a certain claim, whether subrogate it, to settle it, litigate it, and so on, and using only structured data. When we use only structured data, the accuracy of these models was 68%. Then we looked at unstructured data, which was coming out of adjuster notes, people who were actually going and surveying a claim situation and writing some notes up. Only using unstructured data, the accuracy was only 55%. But the real magic is when you combine the two. And that's when you get 72% accuracy, 4 percentage points additional accuracy, which is the new signal in the new data. And that has a lot of value, because for an insurer, that it could be $1 billion impact on their balance sheet, on their P&L. So that's really what we believe. We believe that you have to bring in new data. Okay, now before we go in, let's look at another example of where we have put that to use. So watch this video carefully and enjoy this game.
Baseman! 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 Let's go, Rock. Let's go. Over here, over here. No, come on, come on, come on. Side. 390. Good shot. Wilson, quick throw. It is. Intercepted. Oh, no. Malcolm Butler stepped in front of the throw. Oh, my God. We did it, John. We did it.
As an exciting, this is an exciting event. As a sports fan, you're watching this game with a lot of excitement. But as an advertiser, you're also interested in whether people are watching your ads while this is happening. And we can actually do that automatically. We can actually produce something like this from the video. Today, it's being done very manually, but it's going to be automatically produced. This is a new signal to determine how effective your advertising and sponsorships are in the context of NFL. So if to summarize, it's about augmenting intelligence by bringing in data, algorithms, and compute, using AI to make BI more personalized, and finding new signal and new data. Now let's look at the next set of examples. This is an example of UCSF Medical Center. Back in 2008, they had a case of a nurse over a pharmacist who actually ended up, there was a decimal point error in the dosage, and therefore it resulted in the death of one individual patient while they were administering a drug to them. After that, UCSF decided that they will completely automate their pharmacy. And the next 3 years, they created this robotic pharmacy, which has delivered more than 1 million prescriptions, completely automated, so that the pharmacists who are there can focus on what they do best, which is to talk to patients and tell them how to take their drugs and help them in their recovery from their illnesses. And machine can do what it does best. Matrix summarized it very well when they said, never send a human to do a machine's job. This is a machine's job, and machines should do it. Another example of that is what we are trying to do with Cure.ai. We can look at an image like this and automatically diagnose what is happening in this image. And in this case of image, and produce this report. And this report is basically very damaging, because this person's heart is essentially has what you call as pneumothorax. There is an air between the lung, between the lung and the chest, and this could be fatal if not treated immediately. And therefore, we can also suggest what is the treatment of this image based on this diagnosis. Today, radiologists don't want to spend time on X-rays, because they have a lot of work to do, and they're looking at other kinds of modalities like MRIs and CT scan. The error rates in X-rays is 23%. 20% of the time, they miss out what is there in the X-ray, but because they're not really focused on looking at a comprehensive picture of the X-ray. And 3% of the time, they actually make other errors as well. So you should be very worried if you have to show an X-ray to a radiologist. And that's where Cure.ai comes in and actually looks at automating this entire process and assists a radiologist in making a better decision on what to do. And it picks about 15 different tags on the X-ray. And the idea is this can radically automate radiology and help radiologists make the job that they do best, which is talk to patients. Okay. Another case of improving trade promotion effectiveness. In case of a CPG company, this is in India, they were working with 26 different ERP instances across 33 distributors. And therefore, they were not able to get any idea of how their trade promotions were working. no idea how the trade promotions are working because it's too hard. Integrating data from 26 different sources and then understanding how a trade promotion has worked so that they can plan better trade promotions in future was just a futile activity. They had stopped analyzing promotions and they're just relying on anecdotal intelligence from there. What we did was to put those data sources together, automate their entire process so that now we know exactly how a trade promotion has functioned, and therefore when you plan a trade promotion, it can recommend what are the right promotions and therefore help the CPG company in executing and improving the trade effectiveness overall. Last example here is predictive maintenance of trains. We have been working with the Transport for London and Bombardier in looking at the reliability of trains. The reliability of a train is essentially the reliability of the least reliable component. And in this case, those are the doors. And when the doors stop working, you will have essentially outage and delays. And the idea is to look at the sensor data coming out of the trains, out of the different sensors that are there on the train doors, and helping understand when is a door likely to fail and what are the other complications that it can develop, and therefore providing an advance warning and improving the overall reliability of the journey for Transport for London. So that's really what we've been doing, essentially using unsupervised learning to understand and predict what is likely to happen. And these are really what are the various ways in which you can automate. And when you think of automation and thinking of taking out the machine aspects of our existence, day-to-day existence, this is one way to think about that. On the x-axis, you have algorithmic complexity. On the y-axis, you have the data complexity and the system complexity. When the complexity is low, we can use the traditional automation techniques. But as the complexity becomes higher, we need more intelligence and more AI. We can still be in the rule-based paradigm, but eventually, as things get more complex, we are in the realm of AI and machine-driven intelligence, machine-driven learning systems. And when you cross that, that's the realm of human beings. When it's too difficult, too complex or in terms of data, or too complex in terms of algorithmic complexity, we have common sense, we have medicine. And that's the reason you see companies failing when they're trying to automate the entire realm of medicine or self-driving cars, because they're still in the realm of too complex in terms of data and too complex in terms of algorithmic complexity. Over the years, this horizon will keep expanding. Machines will take a bigger role, and we will be left with what we do best, which is in the realm of complexity and things which are not really objective but subjective. That's where we belong as human beings, and that's the kind of partnership we think the humans and machines will have in the future. So to summarize, we don't send a human to do a machine's job, build systems that learn with time, and leverage unsupervised learning. Now, at this stage, we think there's one more element in getting AI right, and that's about understanding human behavior. Just remember that all of this AI is to actually help us human beings do our jobs better. And one of the examples we saw is in the case of a big global bank, which had this report called At a Glance report. This report used to be 800 pages in size. And essentially, executives were expected to learn from this report and then use that report to make better decisions. Obviously, nobody was reading that report. And then we realized that we could actually automate the entire process and create this into a single page dashboard, which gives you the key insights, what you need to know, and that has reduced the time to action by almost 60%. So we are overloaded with cognitive inputs, and there is a way we must reduce the cognitive overload on human beings. Let's look at another example. And before that, in our quest to change human behavior, normally we employ 4 different tactics. The first tactic is create rules and regulations. Now, this is the IT approach to everything, right? Create rules, you can't do this, you can't do that, and so on. But those are not very effective after a point in time. The second set of strategies is rewards and incentives. The belief is that if you create the right incentives and rewards, people will behave. But even they start to fail after some time. The third system is the whole world of advertising and education, which is, if you tell them enough number of times and put posters everywhere, people start changing behavior. Unfortunately, even that stops working after a certain point of time. And then comes the last and probably the most important way of changing human behavior. It's to understand human behavior and create the right nudge so that you change the environment, people start changing the behavior automatically. Take an example of this retail store. I believe you're going to be more likely to buy ice cream if this happened. Just a simple change, give you ice cream music in the ice cream aisle of the store, and you're 40% more likely to buy ice cream with that music. No difference. Nobody's created any rule for you. No advertising. It's just a subtle nudge to do the right thing in case of the retailer. May not be the right thing according to you, though. Okay, so that. Okay. Let's look at another example of where this has been, this kind of an influence has been used. This is a case of Paris, and here this is about how people walk on the roads of Paris. So they created this campaign a year or so ago. Let's watch it. This has been a very successful campaign in overall reducing jaywalking and reducing traffic fatalities in Paris. An interesting combination of nudge and education. So just to summarize, we've got to reduce the information overload, we want to account for human biases and nudge the right behavior. We think these are the three key aspects of leading with AI. And if you believe that these are the three key aspects of leading with AI, let's look at how to create that roadmap within organizations. Firstly, it's sort of more or less standard. We've got to establish business priorities, identify use cases, evaluate and prioritize them, prototype, learn and iterate from those examples, and then eventually launch, operationalize, and scale. This is more or less standard. But I believe that a few changes need to be made to this kind of a roadmap for greater success. And let's look at those examples. First example. We may start by thinking, take an insurance example. We may start by saying, I want to improve the overall experience of loss, overall experience of claims for insurance, because that is the moment of truth. And let's say for doing that, I decided to drill down and said, okay, I've got to reduce the overall experience of reporting the first notice of loss. And if I want to do that, I have to improve the call waiting times when people call, when a loss happens, when an accident happens. And you may go down a path of saying, let me build models and let me sort of create a bunch of different interventions to improve the call waiting times. And there comes someone who says, oh, I don't actually need to do that anymore because I can send drones, I will automatically take pictures of accidents, and I'll actually settle claims in minutes instead of hours and days. And that would be game changer. So one thing is to look at not just the traditional ideas. When you build the beta ideas, the ideas that actually increase value but are sort of predictable, there will be someone who will come with a creative approach and completely disrupt you. So the idea is not just look at the analytical approach, but also use a creative approach, because there is an art of the possible. We've got to look at the art of the possible, not just look at what comes from structured thinking and the left brain approach that we traditionally use. Let's look at the second example. A few years ago, if you had started looking at speech recognition, you would have given up very early, because in 2012, the error in speech recognition was 17%, essentially not very useful. I'm sure all of you experienced that when you started using Siri a few years ago when iPhone was launched. Very clunky, doesn't work, doesn't recognize accents, doesn't recognize your voice very well, doesn't give you good answers, so on. In the next 5 years, that has reduced to a much better number. It's right now better than human beings. And therefore, if you stopped in 2012 thinking, oh, this is not a good use case because it's not good enough, it has changed dramatically in just 4 years, and the usage has dramatically picked up. In fact, in 2016, Sundar Pichai of Google said that 20% of searches in the US are voice-based searches. So dramatically higher adoption of speech in there. So the idea here is not just work on the beta ideas. I believe the beta ideas are the ideas that are predictable, that are likely to give you impact because you already know their work. But there are some alpha ideas, the ideas that generate true alpha, which are not necessarily maximized for expected impact, but have a high impact if you're successful. And it's important to make sure that we split out the ideas into the ones that know will work, but also explore enough on the ideas that might work, and if they work, will transform our business. Okay, let's look at the third change that we suggest. If you're if you're from the automobile industry, things are getting really, really interesting there, because there are these many startups trying to disrupt each part of the ecosystem of the automobile, right? And there is such a picture for P&G, unbundling P&G. You can look it up. You'll search unbundling P&G. You can see on all the homepage of P&G, all their products, there is a startup trying to disrupt their business. If you look at, try unbundling banking, and you'll see Wells Fargo and all the kinds of companies that are trying to disrupt the Wells Fargo business. Each tab of their homepage, there are a bunch of startups just trying to do that and do it very well. So it's important in that world of disruption that we increase the speed of prototyping and learning. We have to shorten the overall cycle to prototype and learn and iterate in that new world. And finally, this is our impression of what would enterprise IT do if they were building Facebook. This is how it will look. It has all the information that you need. It's just it's impossible to use, right? And therefore, we believe that one of the important things to do is to incorporate human behavior in the way we design these systems. Bring in design thinking, bring in behavioral sciences, and create the right kind of, reduce the overall cognitive overload so that we understand and incorporate human behavior in the way we design these systems. And to build such a culture, we need to do a lot of different things. And we're going to spend some time in the next 2 days in trying to think through this culture. But in all this hype and scare about AI, we shouldn't forget one very deeply important thing, that AI is deeply human. AI has been created by humans to serve humans. It is a product of our imagination and our hard work. It's a manifestation of our creativity, our ability to dream and realize those dreams. The path of AI is only moving forward. It's not reversible. And hopefully, in the next few years, the world will be a much better place, especially if you think of these three things. A, how do we augment human intelligence so that we can improve and bring out our best every day? How do we take out the most mundane and the most automatable parts of our life, the chores that we have to do every day? And finally, how do we make the world a human-first world, not an AI-first world as some people are propagating? It has to be a human-first world so that we can incorporate human behavior and make our lives better. And if we did all of that, I believe that we can create a world that's much better than what we inherited and actually deliver value in the process to our shareholders, customers, and employees. Thank you.